Welcome back, grades 7 and 8, to Cooking with Mr. Wensink. No, welcome back to our grade 7 and 8 science videos. I couldn't leave you hanging on our last video, our materials list. I gave you all the materials list for the muffins, but I didn't tell you how to make them. Well, today we're going to learn how to make those muffins. We're going to take a look at the recipe for those. Last video, we took a look at the ingredients list, which we said was just like the materials list. Today, we're going to take a look at the recipe, the steps in order to make those muffins. And by the way, these are actually the steps. I pulled these off a recipe website for how to make these particular types of muffins. So if you want to try making them, go ahead. I'd be curious how they turned out. But for these ones here, we're going to take a look at these steps. And the steps for a recipe are very similar to the steps that you're going to create in the part of your science fair project called the procedure. So the steps here, it lays it out, individual steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Some of yours might have little amount of steps. Some of yours might have tons of steps if there was a lot of things in it. Even this one here, this recipe could easily, step 2, could easily have been broken down into 3 or 4 smaller steps. Step 1, it says preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Step 2, stir together the flour, baking powder, salt, and sugar in a large bowl. Make a well in the center, and in a small bowl or 2-cup measuring cup, beat eggs with a fork. Stir in milk and oil, pour all at once into the well in the flour mix. Mix quickly and lightly with a fork until moistened, but do not beat. The batter will be lumpy. Pour the batter into paper-lined muffin pan cups. Step 3, some variations, a blueberry variation, a raisin one, a date one, a cheese one, and even a bacon one here as well. Although a 1/4 cup of bacon seems way too few. I think we need a little more bacon than that. And then finally, step 4, bake for 25 minutes or until golden. There's a couple things that I want to take a look at in this recipe, things that are really good in things that we need to include in our procedure, but also things that are maybe a little bit different. One, you'll notice we have it broken down into specific steps. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Your procedure, you're going to break down in the specific steps to carry out your experiment. What did you do first to do your experiment? What did you do next? Not your project as a whole, but to carry out your specific experiment. Here it says preheat oven, and it's specific, 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it says another one here, you don't have to include an alternative there. If you, in your experiment, did 400 degrees Fahrenheit for your oven, make sure you include that. Step 2, I've already said before, it can be broken down into many steps. This one is way too much for a single step. I would break this down into more. It says stir together the flour, baking powder, salt, and sugar in a large bowl. Great, good. Make a well in the center, good. But here it says in a small bowl, I misspelled that, but in a small bowl or 2-cup measuring cup, beat eggs with a fork. Now, this is great in a recipe. It's terrible in a procedure. In a recipe, you want to give people options. They might not have a small bowl, they might not have a 2-cup measuring cup, but they should have one of the two things. And so you want to say, well, if you don't have this, use that. But in your procedure, you want to state exactly what you used. If you used a small bowl, say in a small bowl. If you used a 2-cup measuring cup, say in a 2-cup measuring cup. Be specific to what you used, not to what someone else could use. So it continues on. The rest is pretty good here. Step 3, it adds variations. Now, variations, again, great in recipes, not great in a procedure. You want to just do specifically what you did. Now, you could have a step where maybe you made a batch of muffins that was blueberry muffins, and the other batch was raisin, and the other batch was date, and the other batch was cheese, and the other batch was bacon. In which case, these are great steps to add in. But they're not variations. They're specific ones that you created in your procedure. And then step 4, bake until 25 minutes or until golden. Again, some of you may have much longer procedures. Some of you might have much shorter. But the important thing here is that you're including all the steps necessary to carry out your experiment. The idea is that just like with the materials list and the procedure, it should be like a recipe. Where if you were to go online and look at a recipe, you'd look at the ingredients list and you'd be able to go to the grocery store and buy everything that's on the ingredients list. Make sure you have those items, and then follow the exact steps in the recipe to be able to create that exact dish, that exact food. The same thing is true about your materials list and procedure. Someone should be able to read your materials list and gather those specific things. Then they should be able to follow your exact steps in your procedure using those materials and be able to carry out the exact experiment that you carried out. And in doing so, hopefully they'd also be able to get the exact same results. Just like in a recipe, we hope to be able to make exactly what's in the picture. So hopefully this gives you a better idea as to the material list, the procedure, and how they're connected to a recipe, but also how you can create that for your particular project.